Okay. So thank you guys for joining us. We have some of our residents here to learn about the MSBA feasibility study article that is on our town warrant. We have a presentation for you this evening. It's going to be about 14 minutes long, and it's going to be, it's pre-recorded. So hopefully you guys will find it informative. And if you have any questions as it goes, you can either jot them down or you can use the chat feature to mark the question, and Elaine is keeping track of that all. So, and if there's something that she can answer right away, then she will do that. If it's something that needs some more thought, then we will take that back and think about it. So I'm gonna have everybody remain muted throughout this, and then we can open it up afterward. So let me begin the share. All right, and here we go. Welcome to the Nashoba Regional High School presentation, A Building for the 21st Century. My name is Leah Viverito, and I am a member of the Nashoba Regional School Committee. I am also a Stowe resident. So let's begin. The Nashoba Regional High School was built in 1961 to educate approximately 500 students. Today it serves approximately 1,000 students and over 100 staff members. Parts of the building were renovated 20 years ago in 2000, but in 2020, NRHS is struggling to meet the educational demands of the 21st century. According to NECS, a building this old is nearly past its useful life. So our purpose is to ensure that our flagship school is up to the task of preparing our children for a competitive future. So let's look a little bit at the problems that exist in our current high school. Although long, the following is not an exhaustive list. I will read through it. Our science labs are overcrowded, inflexible, and too few to offer all science courses due to a lack of space and conditions. Not all science labs have proper exhaust systems. Space is limited for guidance and counseling needs in English language learner classrooms. Some classrooms were neither designed nor intended to be classrooms, and many of these spaces have no windows and have uneven or minimal heating. There are no flexible workspaces which allow for the collaboration called for in 21st century learning, and most classrooms are too small for flexible groupings. Instructional space is ill-equipped to serve our award-winning programs such as video production, journalism, robotics, DECA, and computer science. Programs for students with disabilities are scattered around the building, including the library and common spaces, and often are not best matched to program needs. Let's hear from our students.
The top 3 most awarded clubs in our school are all pretty much crammed into one closet. We have DECA, we have robotics, and we have the broadcast and journalism teams that are all sharing one, not only storage space, but collaboration space.
During our broadcast, we have to switch anchors during sports and other things, and we have to just run around and try not to knock everything over while we're mid-broadcast.
We also don't have the technology to do a real TV studio like other schools have.
Despite the lack of space that we have in this current situation, I think that we find our creative sides and make the best out of our situation.
For soccer, we've always been in the back corner. It's just very tight when you have about 60 kids in a program to all be changed in on time to practice. So I would say that in a new school, that would be an important change to have.
Relaxing space is a good spot to calm down if you're feeling upset. If it was a little bigger, we would have a relaxing space.
In Miss Foley's classroom, she's recently had some new equipment and materials brought in, and that's really been great for allowing collaborative space to be created because kids can move the equipment around and they can move the chairs around, and it's allowed them to customize their own space.
So there are two components that MSBA looks for in a building. It's anything that affects the environment in which students are learning. The other is the appropriateness of the building for the educational program. So for the kind of learning experiences that the school is designing for students, does the building hinder that or enable that?
So continuing on with our list, the entire roof is going to need to be replaced soon, which will cost millions of dollars. All windows in common areas and hallways are single pane and require replacement for energy efficiency. There are not enough lockers for all students. This creates multiple issues, including overcrowding in the hallways while classes or between classes while students access them. Despite being dark and narrow, space constraints often require hallways to be used for classroom and study hall space. Several classes take place in portable classrooms that can only be accessed by going outside. The student cafeteria is cramped with very poor acoustics and can be a source of anxiety for some students. The entire high school schedule is arranged around the cafeteria use because of its inability to handle the student population in one sitting. We currently accommodate 4 separate lunch times. The cafeteria kitchen equipment is original and requires updating, particularly in the area of plumbing. Grease traps are undersized for the current student population and regularly back up. The HVAC unit that supplies heat to the kitchen area is designed improperly and draws warm air directly out of the kitchen during the cold winter months. Uneven and poor heat distribution requires students to wear coats to certain classrooms during cold winter months. The school store is in a closet space. The building automation system is 6 generations old and needs to be updated to avoid frozen pipes. Parking spaces do not support the demand and lead to congestion. Multiple exterior doors are rotting at the bottoms of the units. Student locker rooms do not have proper ventilation and lack essential spaces. The gymnasiums are overused, serving multiple student program needs, and the bleachers are nearing the end of their lifespan. Limited storage space in the gymnasium is pushed into a corner of the gym marked off by duct tape. The fine arts department lacks storage space, forcing them to store props, costumes, and building materials in 4 separate locations, including on stage and in unsecured hallways. The auditorium lacks current technology, such as lighting boards, soundboards, and compatible microphones. And birds are nesting in the walls, creating a significant disruption each spring. So what is the solution? To engage the MSBA. The Massachusetts School Building Authority is a state agency that collaborates with municipalities to identify the most fiscally responsible and educationally appropriate solutions to create safe, sound, and sustainable learning environments. If a school system applies and is accepted into this program, the relevant municipalities, in our case, Stowe, Bolton, and Lancaster, will receive a significant reimbursement of all design and building costs. Well, Nashoba has been accepted. In 2018, Superintendent Clenchey submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA. Nashoba did not advance to the final round, but in December of 2019, Nashoba was one of 11 districts accepted out of 61 that applied. This acceptance was based upon our need. This starts a multi-year opportunity to plan and potentially execute some level of significant construction matched with a new and innovative educational program. So what is the process? This chart comes from the MSBA website, but let me break it down into these steps for you. So the first step is called the eligibility period. Nashoba towns must conduct a vote at town meeting before the end of our eligibility period, which will act as a, quote, confirmation of community authorization and funding to proceed, and execution of the MSBA's standard feasibility study agreement, which establishes a process for the district to be reimbursed for eligible expenses. Our eligibility period will end in April of 2021. We only have one town meeting to approve feasibility study and schematic design funding. This vote is to take place on June 22nd. The feasibility study funding request is set not to exceed $1.5 million. We will vote for this at town meeting on June 22nd. Note that partial reimbursement from MSBA will be applied after we begin the actual project. All 3 town warrants can be viewed here. Please note also that all 3 town finance committees recommend this spending. They recommend we vote yes. The second step is the actual feasibility study and schematic design. Once approved, this will document the educational needs of students, create a summary of current space needs, document existing conditions of facilities, establish design parameters, develop construction alternatives, recommend the most cost-effective and educationally appropriate solution, and include full schematic design. Step 3 is actually funding the project. At this stage of the process, the 3 towns must vote again at town meeting to fund the actual project proposed in the feasibility study. Note that partial reimbursement from MSBA will be applied here as well. I have 4 case studies for you of surrounding towns that have recently engaged in the MSBA process. Hudson, for example, in 2013, built a brand new middle school. This is after they built a brand new high school in 2000. There's their construction cost, and you can see that the reimbursement rate back to Hudson was 58%. Harvard is currently rebuilding their elementary school, and they were reimbursed almost 51% of the construction cost. Concord Carlisle has also just recently rebuilt their high school, and their reimbursement rate was 36%. And Maynard High School was rebuilt in 2013. There's its construction cost, and their reimbursement rate was 56%. Our reimbursement rate has yet to be determined. So how can you take action? Step 1, make sure you are registered to vote by June 1st. You can click on this link to see your registration status. Step 2, educate yourself on the issues by reading your town warrant and asking questions. Step 3, attend town meeting on Monday, June 22nd at 7 p.m. And step 4, I encourage you personally to vote yes to fund the NRHS feasibility study. What will your vote mean? Your vote will mean on June 22nd, if you vote yes, the funding of the feasibility study, not to exceed $1.5 million. This cost will be split between our 3 towns based on enrollment. Our towns will determine the funding source, but it will likely be borrowing. If significant construction is approved, the feasibility study costs are rolled into the new, larger bond and are eligible for MSBA partial reimbursement. A project team will then form. The study could last approximately 1 to 2 years, and regular updates will be provided until another town meeting vote is required. All stakeholders will have input into the process. And here's some bonus information. We have to consider the value of the Nashoba Regional School District. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research in a report titled, Using Market Valuation to Assess Public School Spending, every dollar increase in per pupil state aid increases aggregate per pupil housing values by about $20. These findings indicate that additional school expenditures may benefit everyone in the community, whether or not the residents actually have children in the local public school system. Investing in a state-of-the-art educational facility tells prospective homebuyers we value our children's education. And for your information, NRSD is ranked in the top 30 Massachusetts public schools today. But we have spent less per pupil than half of the 289 school districts. What does a no vote mean on June 22nd? Well, this will end our partnership with the MSBA, and Nashoba will go to the bottom of their long wait list. Our district, however, will continue to request funding for individual projects, similar to the leach field and oil tank. Likely projects in the near future include a new roof, updated windows, new HVAC systems, etc. And the state will not assist with these costs. continued decline of the building could jeopardize our NEASC accreditation status. This process is set to get underway in 2023 when the committee comes to Nashoba to see our school. This organization could revoke our accreditation if the building is in disrepair. This nearly happened in Maynard. Colleges do not accept applications of students from unaccredited high schools. And families may choose to move or go to charter or vocational schools, reducing our state aid and increasing school choice dollars spent out. NRSD enrollment peaked in 2013 at 3,400 students for all grades and is currently at 3,150. Let Amherst be a cautionary tale for us. Amherst voted against their project at town meeting, and they are now faced with funding those renovations alone. A new building with MSBA reimbursement would have cost only a little more over time. You can read that article here. So how can you spread the word? Share our story on social media and beyond. To see this presentation again and or for more information, see the Nashoba Regional High School planning page here, or email questions to the Nashoba Regional School Committee at nrsc@nrsd.net. Thank you. Okay. So that is our presentation. That is basically the information that we wanted to share with you. And so I'm gonna let Elaine unmute, and we're gonna move to the chat feature to see if there are any other questions that we can help people with, or if there's any other information that people need.
Yeah, so the only question that we really got through chat was a great one from Kathy about social distancing or other measures at town meeting. And I gave her a quick answer on chat that it's not something that we have any information about right now. Maybe the superintendent has more information, I don't know, but that would be something for the select boards, the town clerk, the town moderator, and the town administrators. Hopefully they're working on those things right now.
They are, and right now, I mean, they're working on a variety of different options that could be available, and I think each community is looking at it a little bit differently. The bottom line is if we can't have the town meeting in June, then the next closest time that they're anticipating that we would have it would be in the month of September. So that's kind of like the backup date right at this point in time. If we can't do it in June, it'll be in September.
Okay. Thank you. And Rich just asked, is it too soon for a projected project size, a renovation versus a brand new school? And I can answer that since I'm already talking. It is too soon. That's what the feasibility study is designed to do, is to figure out what our needs are and what scope or type of a project would be suitable based on the needs of the community and the needs of the students in the future. So. And in fact, isn't there a mandatory segmentation within the feasibility study where they will always look at what would be a renovation cost or what would be a minimal cost? I don't remember the exact terminology they used, but there was like, you always have to have this option, you always have to have that option.
I believe that that's a large component of the feasibility study, is that they look at all the options that are available for the communities to consider. It isn't just, I think sometimes people think it's just about a new building, and that's not the case.
So that's it for me. If other people, Lee, if you want to unmute anybody, or if they want to speak up, or otherwise if people want to keep submitting through chat, I'm happy to be the conduit. But it looks like there's not so many people on here that it would get unwieldy. So if anyone does want to speak, you know, make a gesture and we'll unmute you. Kathy says, Leah talked briefly that the cost of the study would be divided among the 3 towns based on a percentage. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the way that all of this sort of thing is calculated is based upon enrollment. And so whatever the feasibility study costs, so let's say that the feasibility study comes in at 1.2 million. The architects give us their bids and it's 1.2 million. So that is what we would borrow. The 3 towns would borrow that money together. So then it would be divided amongst the 3 towns. But then keep in mind that the feasibility study is also subject to reimbursement, the reimbursement rate. And so let's say that our reimbursement rate is, and it probably won't be, but just for math, let's say it's 50%. So that means it's going to cost us $600,000 to do the feasibility study divided by the 3 towns. And it's like, it's not even, but you can project that it's anywhere from $175,000 to $250,000 to do the study. And considering the list of all the challenges that I read forever, I think that the challenges need a study. You know, this building is not well, it's old. All of the research says that around 60 years old, public buildings need to be retired or, you know, heavily renovated, whichever one is more fiscally responsible. And I do want to say that that website, on the high school's website, we have a high school planning page that you can click on, and you will be able to access that Prezi directly, and all of the hyperlinks are live. So you can see all the things that we hyperlinked in there.
Good point. Adam is asking, where does Stowe fall on the percentage we would contribute to the feasibility study? Basically, what is our percentage of enrollment? Do we have that number right now?
That number is always a little bit in flux anyway, not by big percentages, but it is always in flux. So I don't, any number that we would give you today might be wrong come 2 years from now, for example, when the borrowing actually takes place. I think your notion of like the third, like that's pretty close. All communities are pretty much the same.
Yeah. Okay. Rich also said, will the feasibility study result in the full project design costs?
Well, the feasibility study, or the modules, would continue after approving a feasibility study all the way through like a schematic design for different options. Now, what that would actually cost depends on construction costs and things going out for bid. So I think they can give you an estimate, but a lot of that is going to depend on what the labor market, materials market, and those things are at the time that those things would go out to bid. And you probably could look at historicals for this, but right now, given the current like national economic situation, I'm not sure I would make guesses on whether those costs are going to go up or go down to be able to look at history and try to project forward.
So Adam says, where does Stowe fall? Oh no, we already got that. What's the typical total time frame for this process, including design and construction? The presentation said that the feasibility study phase is 1 to 2 years, but all in.
All in, it can be anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It depends really on how smoothly things go and how quickly and how well poised your district is. Right now, we're in a very strong position. We've done a lot of the work ahead of this eligibility period, so we feel very comfortable and very confident going into the eligibility period, which for us now, we just learned today, will start August 1st as opposed to June 1st. That was something we had requested in light of the pandemic. We wanted a little bit of extra time, so we feel very comfortable right now that our end of the work is done. It will depend a lot on the communities, quite frankly. So 5 to 7 years is probably the all-in number that you would get from MSBA.
Yeah, so the feasibility studies portion of that 5 to 7 years is 1 to 2 years, depending. And so after the feasibility study and the schematic design has been developed, then we go back to town meeting to see if the residents want to move forward with the project. So there are various stages. I would like to say too that all of your town governments approve voting yes, which is a really big accomplishment, I think, for our school district to have kind of moved the towns in this direction slowly, surely. I think that this study has been going on, I don't know, Brooke, for maybe 8 years now.
Yeah, the work that was started on this started certainly before my time. We had a space committee that met and involved a number of different people from across the 3 communities, and that I think that their work was really, really rich, and a lot of their work actually helped to support the SOI that moved forward. So Leah, you're absolutely right. this probably started at least 6 years ago, you're right, to get us to this point in time.
And so it's been so thoughtful from the beginning. And again, it predates me obviously quite a bit in my involvement. And I'm so impressed with how it's moved forward and how methodical it's been and careful, to the point where all of the town managers and all the finance committees have marked this article on the town warrant as recommend. So the big question is the town meeting. I think that that continues to hang over all of us. If it happens, how can we feel comfortable getting there? So, you know, we're investigating ways that we can kind of target a specific time period within the town meeting that people can come in. They are going to implement social distancing measures so that we can be safe. And I think it will be manageable. So I think Mark or somebody from the Grumman family said, if we fund the feasibility study, will companies, architects bid on who gets to do the feasibility study, or is this predetermined?
It's not predetermined, to my knowledge.
Yeah, so there would be a competition there, which is why, that's part of the reason why it takes 1 to 2 years, because it does go out to bid, and you know, we have to, the project team will decide which architects to bring on board, etc.
Working in partnership with MSBA, that's absolutely right. MSBA really does help to walk you through the whole process. And I think sometimes people don't realize either that, and why would you if you didn't know about this, but each stage of this process is a separate module, just like Leah was describing the eligibility period. Even before we can move into the feasibility period, the feasibility study period, MSBA takes a formal vote and approves us to go ahead. And then after that, it goes, so each of these modules is pretty prescribed. And I think it's, again, I would say it feels very comfortable because they have specialists at each stage that help to walk you through that stage while still giving you the autonomy that you need to hire whoever you feel that you need to hire for whatever process.
So Kathy asked, if we move forward with the feasibility study, we fund it, and the review in 2023 fails, right? So that second vote at town meeting, I think, Kathy, right? Oh, can I unmute you? Hold on.
I think she might mean the NEASC accreditation.
Yes, actually, that's what it was. In your presentation, you said that if they lose accreditation, kids can't go to college. If we approve the study and we're moving forward, and then they fail for the accreditation, does that kind of put that failure on hold to allow the school to get up and running?
Yeah, so I can speak to when I lived in Maynard, this is exactly what was happening to that town. The high school was on probation because of the building. It wasn't because of anything anyone else was doing. It was purely the building. And they were in jeopardy of losing their accreditation. And so kind of under that specter, the town finally voted to finance a new building. They ended up going in the direction of a new building. So what the accreditation committee does is they will put kind of extensions on their judgment. And so if you say to them, well, we have a town meeting vote next month, can you just see what happens? And if the vote goes in the direction of taking action, then the NEASC accreditation board will take that into consideration and definitely hold off on any kind of condemnation. Brooke, would you think that that's basically?
I completely agree with you. I think that you articulated that perfectly.
And I think that NEASC, you know, for all the grumbling that public educators do about this board, they do really keep us honest in doing what needs to be done for our kids and for our town. So I think that Hudson found themselves in a similar situation 2 decades ago when their high school was also no longer doing what it needed to do. But I will say too that if we say no to the MSBA process now, they are not likely to take us back on board. So we would go to the bottom of their list, and there are schools that are just chomping at the bit to get onto this short list. And I'm so psyched that we got on it this year. And it was really an enormous accomplishment on the part of Brooks administration to get us into that short list. So if we say no now, we are not going to get back onto it.
Leah, I have a question.
Go for it.
There's been a lot of talk about what this building committee would look like and who might be on it. So I know that process hasn't started yet. So can we talk a little bit about what that will look like and when it will happen?
I can take that question, Leah, if you don't mind. So I think at this point in time, let's just see what happens after the town meeting, and let's see if we can get the funds for the feasibility study, because I really think that that's our next step. And then thereafter, if you take a look actually on the MSBA website, they have a nice description of what that committee should look like. And, you know, we've already got some folks working in the background right now on site in terms of teachers and that kind of thing. You know, and you see Katie Giannetti here tonight, Mike Tollefson is here representing the high school. And so we've got folks already doing some good work. So for example, you know, it would make sense that you would have a teacher from the high school on that committee. And so it's kind of prescriptive. With MSBA, it gives you some wiggle room, but there's some things that just are common sense. Yes, it would make sense to have a high school teacher on there. It makes sense to have a school committee member on there. It would make sense, you know, so it's not really far-fetched, but in terms of the composition. But no, I think we need to wait until we see that the funding is coming through and we're actually in the eligibility period. And I think we can take a look at that startup of the building committee itself.
So, I mean, if you guys, obviously, if you have any questions moving forward, maybe you're going to go back and look at the presentation one more time, and another question pops into your head, definitely email the committee, and you can copy Superintendent Clenchey on that email as well. We are here to provide information. As an elected representative, I think it is legitimate for me to tell you my position on this. I will be voting yes for the feasibility study. To understand the problem. We need a diagnosis. And that is, I think, very, very important for all of us to get past. So if there aren't any other questions, and Rich has just put the Prezi into the chat. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich, for all your technical help this evening.
You're the best. So you guys can click on that. That'll give you really quick access to that presentation. It's not narrated, that version, with my bumbling talking, but you can kind of go through it yourself. All right, guys. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Elaine, for your help. Thanks, Brooke, for your time. I see Todd there, too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good night.